So I'll do a little bit of a lead in and then we'll get into some introductions. If you go to the first slide, please. So this content that we're going to go over is actually, uh, I bet the prototype is broken. Oh, goodness. So you hit next and it went to a random slide.
Oh,
Yep, prototype's broken.
okay.
All right. So we'll do the roller coaster ride through the Figma doc, which I'll get into with portfolio reviews as a big no-go. But anyway, if we go to the slide to the right here, so we're here to talk about some very specific things in how companies interview. This isn't just about what you should put in your portfolio or how you should present yourselves, but this is also about, as a hiring manager, what do I choose? As a recruiter, what does Mary choose? How do you move through the process? How do we make decisions in the hiring world as we're making these hiring decisions? So um, the point later in the class, we're also going to go through at least one, maybe two portfolio presentations. So we'll do kind of a real world look at a quick prototype and then, or presentation, give some feedback, run it just as we would do in an actual portfolio review, and let you see how we would be making these decisions. We'll do like a speak along process, or like, here's why I'm doing this. Here's why I'm thinking. But this is not about how to find your passion or how to find the right company for yourself or something like that. Right. So please move forward. Mary, I'll let you give an introduction of yourself, please.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Mary Senic. I'm a senior design recruiting leader at General Motors. I've just recently joined. I've just surpassed my 5th month. So I too have recently gone through a job search and I'm going to share my experience with you. Prior to that, I was at Amazon and Amazon Web Services for 8 years. I ran multiple teams there. My biggest one was my design recruiting team. So did some great work there and also did technology recruitment for Amazon. Prior to that, I was at Meta before it was called Meta. I was at Facebook doing design recruiting. And prior to that, I was at Google doing design recruiting. So it's great to be here today and just share some of my experience with you about what design recruiters look for, design creative recruiters, how hiring decisions are really made behind the curtain. So when Ed and I were talking through what we might present and what we thought would be relevant, this was actually the content that we landed on because I think you get lots of great advice already about how to make a good portfolio site. But what is lesser known is really what happens with how companies truly hire, how they make their decisions, and how to have really strong footing as you enter the job market. So hopefully we are on target and that is going to be relevant for you. Let's go to this next slide, please.
All right. So a little bit about my background. Most recently, I've worked as a design manager on Alexa, and specifically the transition from Alexa as it is has existed for years to Alexa Plus, the new AI-driven, more AI-driven version, more conversational version of Alexa. But with that, I've had been with Amazon for 13 years. I've worked with IMDb and IMDb Pro within Amazon. I had also led teams in customer trust, protecting you from counterfeit products or fraudulent products. How does that work on a user experience product design side? Stories that we could get into at any time, but a lot of fun. Previously, I've worked for PayPal and eBay. I've done a lot of work for Microsoft. I've worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield. I've done contracting and I ran my own consultancy for a while, and I had clients like the Gates Foundation. And prior career, I was a soldier and instructor in the military, so I have some experience on that side as well. So standing in front of large groups, teaching, telling people what to do comes naturally as a leader and as a manager. So I can get in there and tell people your work is really bad because that's what my soul tells me to tell people. No, and I'm kidding, but my spirit is more, how do we make things right? What do we do to improve? How do we ensure that we're meeting the needs of whoever it is we're building? Okay. To go one forward, so this is just a brief overview of the content we're going to go over. Mary's going to talk about how we add value, go over some of the processes, what recruiters look for when you submit. She'll also talk about how you put your job search strategy together. What do you do? Like, how do you have a good process for that? I'll talk about how major companies do interviews. We'll get into some specifics, and then we're going to do some portfolio reviews, and we'll leave time for Q&A.
Okay, expert advice for resumes, portfolios, and interviewing. So you can go ahead to the next slide, please. First things first, just from a recruiter's point of view, there's a lot that can be really large subtext for designing creative resumes. So I want to talk about part of what makes a great resume for creatives, and depending on which type of role you might be targeting, what's going to be good and what might need to be different. So what can happen with many design and creative leaders is that your resume and your portfolio, of course, are really your tickets into an interview and to get time with leaders and to do next steps, right? So if you are on the branding, the visual side, etc., the layout of your resume is incredibly important. Use of color, totally fine, maybe even a little bit preferred. They love to see personal branding. And so when you're sitting down and you're looking at all of your potential ways you could lay out your resume, the words on the page are actually not very important. And not everybody will tell you that, but that's really just for the visual and the branding side. So think of it as your reflection of your creativity, of your skills, of some of your abilities to land a message quickly with your audience visually, right? And so that's really important on the branding, visual design side. On the user experience side slash product design side, you actually have a little bit more flexibility where the layout itself is not as of critical importance. People are still going to judge. um, but what you're really going for is optimizing for keyword matching in the job description for a couple of reasons. Um, what you need to do in the UX and product design resumes is really clearly articulate everything that you've done, but say it in such a way that is really matching up with keywords available in a lot of job descriptions. Some of it might feel so straightforward. It's like, well, I'm a UX designer. Of course I do this, bless you. Um, but what's important is that your resume is not only going to a hiring manager who probably is a designer creative, it first is going to an HR teammate or a recruiter. Sometimes there's people like me that specialize in design and have worked around creatives their entire careers, but many times not. So what you'll need to do is really make sure that you're using the same words that you commonly see pop up in those job descriptions inside your resume to make it super clear the function that you do, the responsibilities that you have, and that you're matching keywords specifically in some of those job descriptions. So think of it in a way like search engine optimizing yourself. So there's a really specific reason that I'm chatting about this and recommending this. So I think we're all familiar with the rise of AI. What we see is that a lot of companies will not necessarily have large recruitment teams or HR teams. So I've been fortunate and lucky enough to work at some amazing companies where a human is reviewing resumes for 100% of everybody, right? I've probably looked at 300 portfolios and resumes every week for the past decade. But not every company is resourced that way. We're kind of entering a part with the economy where some of these AI tools look really appealing of like, oh yeah, we can help save your hiring team's time. Use this AI tool to see who's great. When I personally audit those AI tools and some of the results that they give, they're not always accurate about who they're predicting, right? Because they're going only off of keywords. So knowing that we're entering this type of environment, one of the best strategies is to have a resume that really strikes some great balances between great design, but also has machine readable content that will be scanned correctly and will help you float up to the top of those search results if the company that you're applying to has any type of AI tool to help evaluate candidates. So choosing a layout, right? Here's another thing that you can expect. Creativity on a resume, we've talked about, that's wonderful. Sometimes customizing your resume and having a very custom resume doesn't actually always translate when you're applying to jobs because there's so many different applicant tracking systems and softwares used. There are some that are better than others. Some will completely garble your beautiful resume and everything will be in the wrong spot and it won't be readable to your recruiters. So if you don't want to make your own custom template or custom layout for your resume, that's okay. There's actually some amazing ones on Etsy, on other sites, and you want to look for the words ATS friendly resume. That's really what's going to be helpful. So what that'll allow you to do is upload your resume pretty easily, usually auto-populates into open text fields, into the applicant tracking system pretty effectively, rather than having to copy and paste, because that's no one has time for that these days, right? All right. So Within the resume, whether you are on the more visual side or the more UX side, there's some common tipping points that I've seen so many times over the years. And so I wanted to provide them to you. Some of this is basic advice, but you'd be shocked to see how many people really don't follow it. So my professional recommendation, please follow this advice. So when you're listing your professional history, you're going to have a company, right? Theoretically, I know that you guys are students, you might not have all this, but maybe you have internships. You have to describe what the company does. So even in my resume, hopefully these are all well-known companies, Amazon, General Motors, Google. I still put the description of the company, right? The reason this is important is that there's so many companies out there, and the person reading your resume is going to make an aesthetic judgment in 3 seconds and probably a functional judgment in less than 10 seconds. It's really fast. So they need to be able to scan to see what domain or industry is this company, what is their position in their market. So there's certain buzzwords that might be really valuable to them versus other things. So for example, if you're applying to startups and you did an internship at a startup and it was a fintech startup and you're applying to a fintech startup, there's a lot of relevancy, right? Like if you put this company that not very many people know about, then you put this role at this type of company, this type of category, that really helps bring your readers up to speed because they're not going to take the time, highly likely, to Google the company to learn all about you or your history and what these companies have done before that. So really serve it up to them on a silver platter if you can. Second thing, standard advice. So when you're doing that, you have your company name, you have the description. Top bullet points really needs to be where you're search engine optimizing and you're doing that keyword matching from job descriptions that you're commonly applying to. And you're going to see it. It's not, you don't have to customize a resume for every single role that you apply to. But if you were to collect, for example, 5 to 10 job descriptions of user experience designers, what you'll see is like a lot of the responsibilities are actually quite common. So you want to grab those words and make sure that those appear as your responsibilities as well, if you in fact did. And then after that, the bottom points, bullet points really do need to be your achievements. So we write them with either quantitative improvements that you've made, qualitative things that you've done, somehow tailor up in a really fast way, 1 to 2 bullet points, maybe 3 bullet points about the best achievements that you drove while you were in that role. So just going over it, you're gonna have the company, you're gonna have the time that you worked there, you're gonna briefly chat about what the company does or the position in the market. The top bullet points are functional bullet points of responsibilities that you've had, tasks that you did. And then on the bottom couple of bullet points, you're going to have the key achievements that you developed while in the role. All right, next one. So working chronologically, let's say that you've done all this great work and you are getting the very first step. So at many companies, the very first step is a phone interview. It's typically with a recruiter or HR teammate. And what we're looking for, that is often not a point of evaluation. It is often a point of information gathering and administration. So don't worry too much. Recruiters are nice people. They're not necessarily there to knock you out of contention or make a ton of judgments about yay or nay to next step. But what they are there to do, excuse me, is to really measure cultural fit, really to measure behavioral abilities, the functional fit of, whether or not your design work is strong enough for the company has actually probably already been made. So what will happen, you'll apply to the role. The recruiter says, "Ooh, that's a great resume. That's a great portfolio. I'm going to move that to my hiring manager." Hiring manager will say yay or nay, right? And if you're in the yay, the recruiter usually reaches out, and it's really basic stuff. Some of it is work authorization to work in the United States, compensation, etc. But many times those recruiters will go deeper into some of your best skills, maybe a couple of stories or examples from your internships, from your student days. So be prepared for those calls to not necessarily be as formal or as strict as a phone interview with the hiring manager, but to be a source of information and sharing between you and the recruiter. Excuse me, just 1 minute. So the hiring manager is really going to be the people that are going to cover the functional skills. They're going to usually walk through your design portfolio, et cetera. But in those recruiters interviews, try to have good energy. You wouldn't believe how many times I've had people on my team say, "I just talked to the greatest candidate. They were so enthusiastic. They had done the research about the company. They were so great." And when I looked at their portfolio, I'm like, they're okay. But it was actually the energy that they portrayed the vibe, right? Their enthusiasm for the company that really helped the recruiter advocate for them to get a formal next step with the hiring manager. So those calls could be great to advocate for yourself. And in it, you need to have a 30-second candidate pitch. Has anybody heard about that? What that means? Have you two heard what that
I've
means?
heard about this.
Okay. Is it because I told you about it?
Probably.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So a 30-second candidate pitch. You can find this all over the internet. Feel prepared. AI knows all about it. ChatGPT can help you. So the 30-second candidate pitch is basically how you can quickly summarize within 30 seconds, for example, a summary of your professional and academic background, and then also position to your audience what you might be looking for in your job search, right? So there's a lot of different examples for this. And as you get going in your career, what you'll notice is that you have more things to say. So the 30 seconds actually becomes really challenging. The purpose of it is that when you're kicking off and recruiters or hiring leaders say, tell me about your career so far, it's actually a trap. Do not tell them your life story. You wouldn't believe how many candidates have also made that mistake too. What they actually want is a really brief introduction. It's who you are, what you've done so far, what you might be looking for, and why you're talking to them that day, right? Like what gets you excited about talking to them to that day. It's a perfect launching point for them to start to ask you more questions about your background and history. You give them like the little appetizer version of your career so far, and then you let them ask questions from there. Further on into the conversation, recruiter's going to ask you all of like the compensation stuff, right? And one of the things that you can do to show up really well for those calls is to ask the recruiter a little bit about the hiring process. They should outline it for you. And this is going to help you understand if you're really that interested in the company. Like, what if they have 70 steps to their interview process? Do you actually really want to keep going, right? What if it's actually something that knowing about this thing that's coming is actually going to help you prepare if you get lucky enough to go on to next steps? So ask them about the interview process, how hiring decisions are made. Something that I love candidates do is when they ask me, tell me about how the search for this role is going so far. So, for example, last week I had a sound design manager, the first ever one at General Motors. And one of the key things for the role that I'm filling is finding a person that not only can do sound design, but can also develop the sonic palette for all of the Cadillac brand, the Chevrolet brand, and the GMC Buick brands. And so when he asked me that, I was like, yes, he's going to show up well, because what happens is I told him, well, here's what we have seen so far that's been really strong in all the candidates. And here's what's been missing, which is why the role is still open. And what that allowed him to do is grab something from his portfolio that he otherwise would not have put in. And when he got to the hiring manager conversation, he actually positioned himself back in relation to what he learned from me about the role and what the shortages had been in the other candidates, right? So you're there to compete. Use that information or use that time to information gather, and the recruiters often will tell you. Does that feel surprising? A little bit, right? Right. Use what you've got. Use what you can gather. It's very
It's okay to
resourceful.
ask these secrets.
Well, it's not so much secret. If you're just like, tell me about this search so far, is there anything that, feels might be lacking in some of the candidates you've spoken with? And they often do tell you. Okay. Very common question. Why are you interested in this company? Do not answer because I really need a job and I've been looking for a year. Somebody did that recently and I'm like, nope, that's not a great answer. Take a moment. If you get an interview, do a little bit of research before the company, at least the night before. Really remember why you applied. Okay. And after the recruiter screens, always feel welcome. It is industry standard. Ask at the end of the conversation, it's been a great conversation with you. Thank you, recruiter. Would you mind if I add you as a LinkedIn connection for, coming up or down the road? They will always say yes, it's part of our job. And so then you have contact points. And, they go on to other companies, so do you. And so it's often a really good entry point for that. Okay, moving on to job search. Can I get a sample in the room? At what stage are you with your student years? Are you juniors, seniors? Graduating. Okay, awesome. Also graduating, amazing. Sophomore. Okay, so we got a range. Any juniors out there? All right. Any freshmen out there? Okay, right. So you guys are nearing the end, just as in terms of median. All right, so job search strategy. Let's go to the next slide, please. Some good news. I have some less good news. So, um, in 2026, one of the things that we are seeing just from a talent ecosystem and also just a job search and labor market trend is that there have been a lot of layoffs in the industries, especially technology, within the past 2, 3 years, right? And one of the things that is actually the bright side of entering the job market as that ecosystem is happening is that companies are looking to optimize cost. And what actually is a really great way to save labor costs is by moving the leveling of positions from more senior talent that we need to onboard, more junior or earlier career talent. So, from that perspective, that's actually opened up quite a bit of early career talent roles for all of you, which is a wonderful thing. But it also means that on the other side of that, there's a lot of very strong experienced talent that's out in the market and they're looking. And you might or might not be competing with them as you're applying for roles, right? So, what we often see in the labor market is we see things flip flop or change every 2 to 5 years. So, we're right in the middle of that. So, as you're graduating, right, you might be graduating as things start to begin to turn, but it might not be that way. So, oftentimes, people, especially early career talent, kind of underestimate exactly how much reach they need to do, how many applications they need to do, how much networking they need to do. And it really does shift based on economic factors and what's happening in the labor market. But as you all will probably enter it, we're still going to be in a really conservative hiring environment. Okay, so that's not the doom and gloom. Don't feel total doom and gloom. Feel optimism that is actually opening up some early career roles that were initially slated to be more senior. That's pretty much every industry, I think, is positive. So, things that you can do to help yourself. Many early career folks, like many folks in general, might prefer remote work. I think it's great. I work remotely. It was one of the draws for General Motors for me to work there. But what you are going to see is many more in office opportunities than remote opportunities. So, be flexible about that. Maybe even be flexible about where you might live, right? So, I'm sure some of you want to stay in Denver. Some of you might be more portable. There's some amazing markets to look at for creative roles. San Francisco is the biggest labor market in the whole country for designing creatives, and it's New York. It's other coastal cities in California, and then it's Austin, actually, as an emerging talent hub, right? So think about where you might want to live. If it's here in Denver, it could be somewhere else if you are up for that. Let's see. So let's go to the next slide. Anyone ever heard of spray and pray? All right. Well, it's a term. It basically means there's no strategy to the job search. You're just like spraying your resume everywhere and sending applications, and you're just praying something will stick. That's actually what you are not going to be doing. You're going to be tempted as you enter the job market to do that because you're like, oh, I'm not hearing back. I'm young, ambitious. I really want a job. Let me just put out a zillion applications. Don't do that. You will not. It will not provide you value. Okay. So be strategic in your job search and wise with your time. We'll go to the next slide and I'll show you how. So, thing that is most powerful that I had to learn the hard way over the years. When you have a job search, you really need to track your submissions. We'll go to the next slide. When you're applying for jobs, when you're networking, when you're being referred into companies, to your tracker, what you want to add is you want to collect the company name, the title of the role, a link to the job description. Sometimes things go away, so I sometimes save the job description in like a giant Word doc. Sometimes people have different versions of their resume, for example. So you want to say which version you used. And then what you'll want to do is really make sure that you categorize this. And this is the part that a lot of people do not do that I think is a huge advantage if you were to do it. A lot of people don't categorize how interested they actually are in the opportunity, right? They just might have a flat tracker, no prioritization, right? So think about categorizing it as gold, silver, bronze, whatever you could do, like red, yellow, green, right? Gold, silver, bronze, and meh, what I used for my job search with my own tracker. And the purpose of that is when you identify a company or a specific industry that you're just really crazy about and you really want to work there, categorizing it as gold will actually help you prioritize your time. So if you were doing job search every week, those gold classified roles, you need to do everything that you can to get in there. You need to see, who do I know at that company? Who do I know that knows somebody at that company? Do I have an alumni in my network at that company? How can I get into that company? How can I customize it, right? So only for the gold category would I recommend ever customizing your resume. I might even write a cover letter for those golds, right? So think about spending probably a third of your week on the golds. They might be smaller quantities, but that's really where you're maximizing it. You're putting a ton of effort to try to see how can I get in the door? How can I get in the door? Next up is your silver, so it's a little bit scaled down. Next down is your bronze, right? So you got to set your timeline accordingly. So for bronze, I might only spend 20 minutes or 20% of my week. That's like one day if you're job searching full time. And then there's the meh roles. That's like usually on LinkedIn, they have an easy apply where you could just be, do I want to be considered? Do I want to be considered? You're not really researching the company. You're not trying to find an inroad. You're just executing, right? So have you guys ever heard advice like that about securing your job search? Okay, this one saves a lot of people time and energy. And consistency, you got to have it set a daily goal. As mentioned, people sometimes underestimate how tough today's job market can be. Average that I've heard from a lot of people is 100 or more submissions, right? And you want to pause yourself. You don't want to like send all out 100. You actually want to do major pushes each and every day. So as I was job searching, I set it my goal. It's either time boxed 2 hours. This is what I'm doing for the next 2 hours, or 10 applications. You can think of it that way, whether it's a timestamp or an actual quantity. There's usually, it's not great to take 0 days, right? You can't have a 0 day. So don't take the days off. Take the weekend off if that's what you want. But I think that those metrics is actually the consistent daily activity that will really help you the most. Okay, so when you have a tracker, you're going to be able to see which version of my resume actually resonated the best with the market. That's how I myself found out that my player coach version of my resume that showed, yes, I can still recruit and I'm a manager, outperformed all of my other versions by 4 times. So having those trends are great. Let's go onward.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit here about what the interview process actually looks like and why some of those steps are in place. And you should be able to play now if you want, instead of just scrolling. I think I deleted all the pieces from it. So it looks like it's working great. Okay, so let's talk about pieces of the interview. So as you're invited to come on site or to an actual interview after a recruiter has spoken with you, after you've maybe spoken to somebody else at the company to see if they want to bring you inside, if they want to do an interview, the actual structure of whether you go in person isn't happening much anymore, but it'll probably be online and there'll be a few steps that'll go in it. These are kind of the common steps. The ones you will see, you'll see that you're invited to a portfolio review where you demonstrate your work, you show it. You'll have possibly some type of a functional exercise that measures your ability to do the work that that company is asking for. So if it's a user experience or product design, you might do a whiteboard exercise, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. You'll have one-on-one interviews, and this could be 1, 2, 3, 5 different individual interviews you have with people. Some companies will also have an impartial interviewer or an extra interviewer on some roles. And then a part you won't see is the decision meeting that happens. And this is where all the feedback is collected and a decision is made on every individual candidate that comes in. So if you'll go forward, please. So we'll talk. Was there a question? I heard. So anyway, so let's talk a little bit about the portfolio review. From my perspective as a hiring manager, this is kind of what I'm looking at. I'm looking at, does the person that I am watching right now as they give a presentation, are they doing the type of work I need? Often I've seen presentations that are wildly different than what the role might be. And whether that's because we missed something in the recruiting process and the person came forward and I need to hire a multimodal designer that understands how voice and visuals interact with each other as you're talking to a system, and nothing that they show me has multimodal, has voice interaction with it. All right, well, that's a little bit of a miss. So I need that. I'm not seeing it. It's I don't have that point to be able to measure in their work. And is the work they did right for their environment, not just my environment? So I'm looking at both of those things, because as you're given a design brief, as you're given a problem, and as a designer, I like the word problem. Some schools will teach you that there are opportunities, not problems. That problems are a bad word. Has anybody ever had a fight with a piece of electronic equipment? Did you think, gosh, this company has an opportunity to improve their product? Or did you think I've got a problem right now, right? So putting yourself into the context of that customer is important. And so when I'm watching somebody present their work, I need to know, was this the right thing for that environment? Not just is what they did the right for my environment. Would I have done the same thing? Oh, I wouldn't have done that. Oh, we wouldn't do that in my company. No, that was right. What you did is correct. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Inside the portfolio, kind of the logistics, 2 to 3, 10 people might be in the room. It really depends. I've interviewed and known teams, interviewed with as an interviewer and interviewed on teams where they want the whole team to show up. So you might have 15 people in the audience. There might be 2 or 3 people. It doesn't always have to be the decision makers. Sometimes it's just we want everybody who comes to our team to be able to see new people's work. So that's sometimes who's in the audience. Your presentation, the material in it, it has to look right. It has to look good. It has to be presentable. I have to be able to understand it. The contrast has to be solid enough that when we're presenting it, I can see it, I can read it, I understand what it is. That is super important. And like I was hinting at a few moments ago, as Amara was needing to scroll through our slides, if your presentation is, I'm going to open up a Figma doc and I'm going to zoom in and out all over the place and take you on a roller coaster ride of my thought process and make me vomit, is not going to go so well, right? So you want it to be fairly structured. Other potential challenges that I see in it in some portfolios is where somebody has, I don't know, 200 slides, Mary, and they're next. And then questions come up and somebody says, oh, in your first project, can you show me this thing again? I would like to talk about it. And then they go back, 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 back 100 times in order. Come on, have some type of easy navigation practice with your portfolio presentation so that you're ready to go. And I just realized 2 things here. I want to disambiguate. I'm going to use the word portfolio in this context, and what I mean is the presentation, and not your online portfolio that somebody has an opportunity, a website or a Figma link or something that they have the opportunity to go and observe. That can be a little bit more detailed, can have a little bit more information in it. The presentation that you're giving needs to be structured, and you practice with it. Expect to be thrown off your narrative at times. Don't expect that you're just going to read. Some of the most boring portfolios I have ever observed is where somebody is seriously reading all of their script, all their content, which is great, right? You've got it written down. When you're prepared, you do well. I think we all know that. However, if you're only prepared to read directly off of your content, it's going to make a very dry presentation. So one of those things that we look for, and Mary spoke a few moments ago about having that passion come through in your call with the recruiter. All right, not everybody is a rah, passionate person, right? I'm going to bet at least 3 people in this room, when Mary said that, thought, does that mean I got to put on my yay mask or something, right? No, you don't. But you need to be able to share solid information. I once did an interview for Twitch. Everybody knows what Twitch is. They were interviewing for a user experience product designer. This designer was super flat affect when he spoke. It was really monotone. He didn't show a lot of emotional range in his answers. He was just kind of mellow and straightforward. But this guy was funny. Like when you listen to what he was saying, I'm like, that was a joke. And not a single person in this room understood that. And in my one-on-one with him after the presentation, like he laughed a couple of times. I laughed a couple of times. He actually, one of the things he had done in his past is he worked for the Oatmeal and he made the Exploding Kittens online game, was one of his projects. I'm like, this guy is pretty awesome. I was all for hiring him. The hiring team was not for hiring them because they said he wasn't fun enough for Twitch. Okay. And at Amazon, that was a problem for me. I was there. My role was to be the impartial observer to ensure that everybody was making the right hiring decision. And I had to teach the team, hold on, just because this person wasn't like jumping up and down on the table, explaining how cool everything is and getting you excited and amped up doesn't mean they're not a good designer. What this person has, you need. You told me all the needs for your role. This person has it. You really need to hire this person. So um, you don't need to be that excited person, but you need to be able to convey the concepts. You need to be able to teach me what you're showing and why that was the right thing to do. And typos matter, right? And I know that's spelled wrong on purpose, but anyway. Okay. Inside your portfolio, uh, what we're going to be looking at inside of each project is what it is. I want to, like, for your project, explain what it is. Like Mary said in your resume, sometimes the audience is not going to know what the company is, what the product is. Like I've seen candidates give a presentation and they expect you knew everything about this random startup with 12 people that you've never heard of and everything about the product that has like 4 active daily users. Okay, I have no clue. Please tell me what it is, but you don't have to teach me what product design is. You don't have to teach me how user research is done. I need to know what your process was and what research you did, but I don't need to know it. Like, you don't need to teach me my own craft, right? So know your audience when you go into that room, as well as show that process, have your project laid out to it. They're explained. Show the conclusion. You got a challenge. What was your solution to that challenge? Why was that right for that context, that customer, that business? Those are all very important pieces of information to be able to convey in that presentation. And then finally, how did it work out? What were the results? I'm going to guess many of you don't have a lot of experience from design careers that you'll be able to put into your portfolio. Some of it may be jobs that you've done locally for a friend or a family member. Some of it may be classwork, school project work. That's completely expected for early career talent. Somebody coming in from school, somebody on interviewing for an internship. This is absolutely what I expect. So the results may not be, I converted additional customers to our product. Here was, the acquisition rates. Here was how I affected sales numbers, something like that. You may not have results like that. That's okay. There was something that you can share. Here was how, like, I actually presented this and I got a D on it. And here's why I got a D. Because I did this thing that was different, right? Like if you're going to give me a negative output, you've got to explain to me why. I missed something, I redid it. Here's what I did to fix it. Here's how I corrected that grade. Here's something, right? Tell me what that result was. If the result was I took a small contract, I created this banner site for a company, and I don't know how well it performed. I don't know how many people it converted, but they called me back and they asked me for more work. So obviously they enjoyed my work and I'm actually doing something additional for them right now. So those results can be varied. If you have specific things and you know what they are, great. Don't make it up. Don't pretend. Don't say, yeah, we got 13 billion daily active users off of this thing if you can't prove it. Okay, next slide, please. Let's talk a little bit about functional exercises. So that functional exercise where you're asked to perform. Is that scary? Anybody think if I asked you right now on the spot, let's go to there are no whiteboards. Let's go take a marker and draw on the wall. Is that, oh, there's a little, okay. Yeah, well, okay, we'll use the whiteboard then. So facilities doesn't yell at us. And we need to work out a solution to a challenge. Right. Amara, have you ever made a multi-million-dollar decision in 15 minutes on a whiteboard?
No, but I can get the ball rolling.
Okay. Yes, I have absolutely made multi-million-dollar decisions in 15 minutes on the whiteboard with a product manager. We've got a problem. Let's talk about it. Here's one possible solution. Here's the second possible solution. Let's take part of 1 and 2 and put it together. Here's a third. Yes, that's it. Let's go. We've got to get something out because there's a problem, right? Not because there's an opportunity. Problems. So this is the type of thing you may need to do on the spot. So let's go forward, please, and talk a little bit about, all right, I had it on the spot. All right, that was my feeling of it. But There are different types of these exercises. For a user experience, product design role, you're looking at being given a prompt that's going to ask you to solve for a specific type of challenge, and you're going to work through, right? There are going to be specific things you're going to want to go over. Who is the customer? What are the problems? What are we trying to do? As you go all the way through that, you need to stay focused on that customer. Like what the pieces you define along the way are super important. Visual research role, I'm probably not going to put you on the whiteboard unless I need somebody who can draw on whiteboards as that functional exercise. But there are other ways that some of those are done. Research, often it's a planning exercise. Here's a challenge. How would you do research to get the answers? Go for it, please. So what we're checking on in that is, do you effectively communicate? Are the questions you ask driving toward the right type of collection of information so that I know you understand what it is that we're trying to solve? I want to see your design process. Like, how are you thinking through this? Because ultimately, this is exactly about what that process is, not did you get the right answer. This isn't, there's only one right answer to which hand am I holding up, right? A or B, right or left, right? No, this is, there's ambiguity to it. And in 45 minutes, you're not going to be able to solve the right answer to some of these prompts to be able to say, this is a solid business plan. We're going to go forward with it. And we want to ensure that as feedback is given during that process, you understand it. You take it well. Are you defensive? Do you say, no, what I just wrote, who are you to tell me that, my customer is wrong? Well, remember in the beginning, we said you were focused on customer A. Well, this solution is focused on customer B. Help me understand why we're not focused on customer A any longer, right? If that's a defensive answer or if that's oh, holy crap, good point. Let's go back. Let's make sure that I'm solving for it. And all of that is not just let me put you under pressure and see what happens, but like I said, there may be multi-million-dollar decisions that could be made at times out of a quick decision. Okay, please go for it. Here are a couple examples of the types of prompts you might be given. So for product design, can you create a system that helps customers rent bicycles at a large park, right? Like, how would you do that? You can start picking that apart so many different ways. Do you think it's got to be a mobile app? Do you think it's something they do on site only at a kiosk? Is it something that they would want to schedule beforehand and have ready when they show up, right? Like all these things, the way you pick that problem apart is going to determine what conclusions you come to. And if we define, you ask me questions in there, okay, great. Where's this park? How big is it? How remote is it? Is this in a city? So you start asking these questions, you start to define, okay, great. So this is Rocky Mountain National Park. And gosh, these are going to have to be bikes that people take on very large hills and very big distances. And okay, it's only going to work some parts of the year because there are other parts of the year it's not, the roads are going to be closed. So you start to form that, who's the customer? What do they need? How often? Then like you get deeper into that. What about timed entry during the summer? Like there are other challenges that you'll need to pull out in order to actually be able to make a solution. Research, another example there. How do you make a plan for researching how customers make high dollar purchase decisions, right? Like, okay, let's plan that research. Let's talk a little bit about take home exercises as well. So often not often, I'm going to say it's not often, but maybe 10, 15% of the time, you might see a company that says, we would like you to do some work from home. I have horror stories. Multiple designers that I know have horror stories where somebody stole their work, where somebody asked them to do something and then they never heard back. But I'll just share, if you're given a take-home exercise, evaluate whether or not it's worth your time. Is this one of your gold companies? Are you willing to do that? If this is a requirement for even submitting your job application, really? Come on. But okay, maybe if it's somewhere you really want to work. Some of the big design agencies that were in existence when I was early in my career had some places that aren't necessarily in existence anymore, like Adaptive Path was a big agency, IDEO, Cooper, like these places that I respected in my early career. Like a lot of them had, you need to submit this application. They would be things like redesign the automatic teller machine. Okay, great. Why does this thing only give me 20s? I want other bills. Like start thinking through challenges like that and submit. So I did one of those. And then ATMs were updated, so I can only guess that it was my solution that they sold to the world. But anyway, let's go forward, please, just a little bit. So there may be different ones that are actually part of the process that would be necessary. When I worked at PayPal, all visual designers that I hired had to take on their own time, just redesign that PayPal homepage. That was the common exercise that was given everybody. Now, that is really close to, am I asking you to do something that I myself might then take and use? So there was seriously risk as part of that. So if a company is asking you to solve one of their problems, that could be a legal challenge. At Amazon, I created a rule, I won't call it a policy, but a rule that we are not to ask candidates to solve our own problems. First interview I ever did with Amazon was for the gift card team. My whiteboard exercise was, hey, let's solve this problem the gift card team is having right now. Okay, well, you got me for an hour, let's go. So we design a problem. Afterward, or we design a solution. Afterward, the recruiter contacted me from Amazon and said, the team really liked where you were going and they would like you to put some more time in on that and submit it to them. What? No, if you don't have the information you need, I told the recruiter this, if you don't have the information you need to make a decision on me right now, I'm not your person, because I wasn't willing to keep going through more and to give them more answer. But all right, presented or submitted. Oh, so often when you do this, they might ask you, do you want to, or not ask you, they'll tell you, this will be part of your portfolio presentation. We're going to give you an exercise. We're going to ask you to do something and then have you show that. Often in product design roles, audio design, multimodal design, doesn't often happen, but you might run into it. Go for it, please. But this brings up, should you allow AI to then solve the problem for you? Maybe, maybe not. If it's a functional skills assessment of your ability to perform the role, don't use AI. Maybe use it for some things, idea generation, something like that. But any of your work has to be your work. Submit your own work. Don't steal somebody else's work if you think of it like that. Everybody probably has their opinions on, anything AI generated on the artwork is stealing from other artists. Okay, maybe it is because they were trained on visual things, and how did they learn to do that? It's not given credit. But okay, I didn't cite this picture because I made it myself. ChatGPT is pretty clear. I didn't steal that one. But all right, keep going, please. All right, one-on-one interviews. So your one-on-one interviews might be with one person, might be with two people. At Amazon, the way we would do it is if there were two people in the room, one person was shadowing and learning the process or observing that person and measuring how well they interview. So there'd probably only be one person asking questions. But some teams will do multiple people in the room where you'll have two people and they're both asking questions and they step over each other, or a panel interview. God, they get awful, where you've got 10 people in the room all trying to ask their questions. This is awful. Like, we should eliminate that, but sometimes it happens. So expect it, but usually it's going to be one person at a time. Types of questions you'll be getting: a behavioral question, which is like, tell me about a time that you did something or something happened or you solved a problem. Tell me about a time that customer asked for one thing, but they needed something else. You can look these up online. You'll find thousands of them, I'm sure. Amazon's bank is really good, helps you frame some of your cases and understand what it might be. Another one, hypotheticals. How might you perform this action? How might you do this solution? So those are kind of the two. And if we go forward, I'll talk a little bit about strategy for behavioral interviewing. At Amazon, this is what they teach, the STAR format. If anybody's familiar with it from user research or from other research areas, you're looking at kind of forming your answers into a specific set of content that you're able to deliver. So what was the situation as it was presented to you? Let's go into your tasks as well. What did you do specifically tasks, like what were the tasks you were given? Maybe not just what the situation was. What were your tasks that you were asked to do? I was responsible for developing the voice interaction on this thing. Okay, great. What actions did you take? An important piece there in a lot of interviews, like it may be very common to say, we did this, we did that. Great. As an interviewer, as a hiring manager, I want to know what your unique contribution was, not just, great, you worked for a company, you worked for a team, that company did this. What was it you did? How did you solve the problem? What was your unique contribution? That's what we're getting at there with your actions and what happened there. Mary.
the good news here too. There's so much available online for Star. Very well known.
Yep. And then ultimately, what happened? What was the outcome? Please. 2 minutes. Okay, I can talk fast. We'll keep going. Next set of content. So something you will not see is feedback. So each interviewer at most companies has to create like, hey, we just did an interview, let me write it down. This is the business justification for their conclusion on your interview. This isn't them saying, I liked this person, we should bring them on board. It should be the work this person did was exactly what we needed for this and this and this reason. And it should be measurements. You will never see this. If you're not on most interviews, you won't see it outside of even that interview group. If you're not one of the decision makers or one of the people who was directly interviewing a candidate, you won't see it. And as a recruiter, if you were to ask Mary, please tell me what happened in my interview, she's not going to tell you for legal reasons. There's huge liability. So you won't hear back. You'll get the, we've decided to go forward with other candidates email. All right. Oh, did we get mixed up there? Final decision meeting. All right, I might have additional things I missed. Yeah, I think, no, that was right. Yeah, that was the end of the content. Oh my God, I hit the buzzer. That was exactly what happened. So that
Did we leave any time for Q&A?
Q&A was supposedly after
at
the portfolio review. So no, that was the right
Yeah.
slide. But anyway, final decision meeting is something that you won't see either, where everybody gets back together. Everybody reads the feedback and understands what was happening. Different companies do this in different ways. Google has an impartial group of people called the hiring committee that are not even people that you interviewed with. They just get all the feedback and they make a decision on whether to hire or not based on what people submitted. At Amazon, the bar raiser and the hiring manager make the final decision. At other companies, it's often the hiring manager who makes that final conclusion, but everybody gets together and has a conversation about each interview. Okay.
Oh, we'll hand it
That
over to
was the
Mary.
content.
So we're here for any and all questions, right? Or is that after this section? Okay, portfolio reviews. Yeah, write them down. It's hard to remember, I know. So go ahead, take a minute, write some stuff down. Curiosities, your main takeaway. I'll give you maybe 30 seconds before we launch it. Okay.
Alrighty, so hello everyone. My name is Justin. I'm a senior here at University of Colorado Denver. I graduated in 1 month. I'm excited to have the opportunity to present my project here. I'm a visual designer. I specialize in product UX UI design as well as branding and identity. So for my project, I want to present Revy. So Revy here aims to redefine the UX in automotive infotainment systems. As we move on to the first slide here. So the main issue that we do see today is just this large emphasis on humongous touchscreens that you see in modern cars. You see like Teslas with these like iPad style touchscreens. You also have like Porsches where they have like these super wide systems that go all the way to the passenger. As we look today, the average size of a vehicle infotainment display is 12 inches. So that's about an 80% increase since 2018. So on top of that, I think the main question is just how is this modern tech in vehicles really there? Does it take away from the importance of driving, which is safety? With these large interfaces, you usually see a lot of like unfriendly UI. There's just a lot of bug issues that just makes driving more distracting and difficult. So my solution with Revy aims to compete both against high-cost proprietary systems while aiming to compete against smartphone mirroring, which is like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. My whole idea of the system here is to have a streamlined, minimal user interface that helps reduce ICE off the road time. Revy focuses on a lot of proper visual hierarchy and accessibility. Again, also reducing this cognitive load while driving that just gives a lot more user confidence for the user while they sit down. As we start moving to my process, I wanted to focus on pretty much a large range of demographics. So pretty much anybody that's in the market for a new vehicle is the target audience here. These users are both tech savvy and they value also the ease of driving. A lot of important industry statistics is the U.S. market sold 16 million new vehicles in 2025. That's the highest number of volume that we've seen since 2019. So that does mean that more people are purchasing new cars. 85% of new cars also have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto integration in these vehicles. And then the average age of a car on the road nowadays is almost 13 years old. So that also leaves a lot of room for opportunity on building a system that also has the same longevity as the vehicle. Moving forward into the data of my user research, there's two important points that did emerge. Point number one is that I kept seeing a consistent theme of how modern vehicle infotainment systems needed to have more of a user-centered driving experience. This means having simplified UI elements, clear iconography, and personal UX writing were very important key elements for minimizing distraction. Additionally, a second point that we did see is focusing the cockpit of the vehicle to have a more driver-centered environment through these simplified design systems. Briefly going through my competitive analysis, I just wanted to understand what manufacturers utilize in their own vehicles. Outside of vehicles having their own built-in infotainment systems, like I said, 85% had Apple CarPlay, Android Auto integrated in their vehicle. You see a lot more newer vehicles such as like GM, Mazda, Polestar, Honda integrating more with Google infotainment. And then you do have like Tesla and Rivian that have their just own in-car proprietary system. Moving forward to my design system here aims to set standards for both components, radio buttons, associated labels, text, and other states. Three main principles emerged with this. Principle number one is be bold. A lot of that is just to emphasize the font usage. Less is more is to emphasize the minimalistic approach. And then simple semantics is to make sure everything is legible. The task flow here represents crucial steps that a user would take during navigation. It's a bit small to see on the screen. I apologize for that. But pretty much from the start that you do see at the top left, follows three main elements on the screen. So the first element is quote unquote cards, which would be your widgets to go into any applications on your screen. You would have the nav bar and then the status bar. This task flow helps prioritize high frequency actions while tucking away secondary configuration. So each task branches off into smaller subtasks. And then also the size of the box in this task flow emphasizes the importance of that task in the entire system. So these are my four main screens within the project of Revy. As you see on the top here, the nav screen will always have the always on widgets is what I call them. So these will be your most used applications, for example, like a music app, reminders app, navigation app, so forth. There is also a collapsible icon. So that way, if users need to utilize the whole screen while they're driving, they can also help minimize distraction that way. The second screen here is the music app. So the music app allows offers minimized buttons with information that leaves users with clear visual actions. Again, finding the information that they need and making sure that everything is clickable with proper visual hierarchy. The third screen here is the dashboard. So the dashboard is placed in a 3-column with 3 widgets here on a 2-page slider so that people can access all of their applications as well as having access to more information such as vehicle information or whatever apps they would like with one gesture. Then lastly, there would be an integrated voice UI. This will be utilized for most important tasks such as like when you're listening or responding to text messages. And then I do have a prototype that we will play. Let's see if this plays here. Ooh, it might not play because it's in Zoom, I think. There you go. Sorry about that. So anyways, I do have a short demo prototype. I'll be narrating over it here for you guys. So as we start the prototype here, like I said, there is a 2-page slider. The 2-page slider will have all the applications. On the bottom, you can't really see it because it is washed out on the display here, but there is a little affordance that shows you which part of the page you're on for the slider. The music app does work right here. You have access to all your songs. You have real-time vehicle information. Like I said, these widgets will be adjustable to whatever you would want. But just for the sake of the prototype, these are the widgets I chose. You would have a favorites icon that takes you right into the contact screen, that you have full access to that. Like I said, everything is trying to make as minimized actions as possible to keep your eyes on the road. Moving forward, this is the navigation screen. So the navigation screen, again, is pretty streamlined. The main thing about this is the collapsible widgets for the always on widgets. For some users through my research and prototype testing, they really didn't like the widgets being on top of the screen. So this helped minimize the distraction. The top left icon is where you can change your destination, where you need to go. On the bottom left is a mute icon, and then that icon right there resets your positioning. And then the top right, I do have a little icon that you can talk into. That's, again, the voice integration for your destination. That way you don't have to type or make a preset on where you want to go. The next page here, or the next screen here, is the phone app. So the phone app, again, to help minimize distraction. Just wanted to keep everything pretty streamlined. The idea of the layout is to have the most important interactions closer to the drivers, since the drivers are on the left side here. And then you can make your phone call. There is other icons such as mute, speaker, that all pops up in one screen. Again, to help minimize the screens within this prototype, I do have a drop down that gives you that you can toggle between contacts, messages, and the phone app. Into the prototype screen here, again, or the music app here. Again, the clear visual look helps drivers see what they need to go to. Everything works as it should. On the bottom, it does show you upcoming songs that you do have in your set playlist. The bottom left toggle here allows you to switch easily between the music and the radio app. There is a tune button as well that will allow you to be able to go and tune the radio station that you want. We will pretty much almost the end of the demo here. This is just a settings app, everything you need that is in the system or within your car. You'll find it all right here. And then the bottom left is your app drawer. The app drawer is where you have all your apps located. Again, pretty straightforward and streamlined where you need to go. Other than that, I do have a live prototype link if anybody wants to interact with it. But other than that, that is it.
Okay, I've unmuted myself. So I did take a few notes. Thanks for the presentation. Where'd you go, Justin? There you are. I appreciate you coming in front of the group as well and sharing. So thank you very much. As I was listening to your beginning portion of this, and I'm going to ask questions first, so we can go into whys and stuff in a moment. But one of the first things that I would really love to understand a little bit more, you came up with the concept of control, but you never really explained what that is. Could you help us understand what you mean by control? Yeah, you brought up the context, early in with having your, I don't know if I wrote it down, but confidence, increased confidence.
Confidence. So a lot of that comes from just pretty much how modern, and a lot of this was also like a personal experience of mine. It's just how modern infotainment systems can get kind of clunky or get a lot of like information heavy. So really the importance here, or my emphasis here, was to have user confidence with the user so that they know where exactly they are clicking within the system. So a lot of that is just pretty much the way it's structured is, like I said, important visuals are always on the left side, least important on the right side. So a lot of that, again, just that increased user confidence so that they feel less distracted. A lot of that also just comes from my research over the last months on about how the longer it takes a user to look at a screen, the more of their reaction time dips down while they drive. So just piecing all that together was like the whole idea
Okay.
of a problem to solution.
So confidence in my ability as a user to navigate the system and to understand how it functions.
That's correct.
I'll ask one more, Mary, and then I've got a bunch written down, but I'll hand it over. For the other thing, the piece I really didn't understand at the beginning was, are you suggesting that you create an aftermarket product that's able to be installed, like physical hardware and things that can be installed into vehicles, and that the original equipment manufacturers, or the automakers, would possibly adopt as we bring in Revy as the system that we use in our cars when we manufacture? Or like, help me understand, like I didn't quite catch what the product itself is outside of what the system is and how it works.
You're pretty close. It is more of like not exactly third party, but it'd be more pitching my system to automakers to incorporate as their integrated infotainment system. So for example, like I know Mazda did this recently with their vehicles, is they ditched their in-house infotainment system for Google infotainment. Google infotainment, you are seeing like pop up a lot more. And it's a little bit different than Android Auto, because Android Auto is more of a smartphone mirroring. So you have to connect your phone to it, to where these would come with the vehicle from the manufacturing company off the
So
lot.
different hardware. You're
Different-
not talking about creating the hardware, you're talking about creating the software system and vehicle navigation that would happen, or not just navigation, but the vehicle operating system that you would see inside the infotainment.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I wanted to roll back to some of the research that you did. So you covered it in a couple of slides. What were some of your most important research findings that you think really helped shape the design direction that you ultimately went with?
There was definitely a lot of research. So I think my whole process of research, it was a huge spectrum, because like where I initially started was almost 180 to where like I ended up finishing at. So like first, I think I initially started my research with like, if there's guidelines in the automotive industry for UX and all that stuff, to where then I ended up finding case studies about how drivers, interact with these systems, and how like they started testing and like perceiving their cognitive load. And I think an interesting study that I did find, well, there's a few studies that I did find that was pretty important, was one was, I did realize that touch screens, if people tend to like use a touch screen while they're driving, they end up putting like 5% like throttle on their gas pedal. So that was kind of interesting. So that was like where my voice integration kind of like came in. Two was some studies I did find about how the longer you look at the screen, the more your net like reaction time dips down. So one study I did find was drivers that tend to look at a screen for up to 40 seconds ended up having like a 30-second like time and reaction. So that was very interesting. So there was a lot of studies that helped just kind of like made me just direct this whole project. So
Just to add, my audio will pick up. Oh yeah. Ew. All right. Sure. You ready? Okay. So another question for you. Can you walk us through any other iterations that you explored that ultimately didn't go with? So I'd love to know just a little bit about the process of other things that you explored before you landed on some of these final designs.
yeah, definitely. I think like a huge because like I have like a bunch of concepts of what I've gone through with this project. Like my initial point was just having this like fully just voice integrated. However, when I did do surveys with people anonymously on like what they use in their car, what they prefer, and I had it like overwhelming like answers of how people still use touchscreens in their car, and they feel the most comfortable using a touchscreen in their car. So that was kind of like really kind of like switched my whole project around, because like my whole project was like the initial state of like the solution I wanted was fully voice integrated, and then you can only control it through like a knob or anything like that. So with the data that I received that people still like to do that use touch screens, that kind of like had to change my whole like complete direction of my project. So that's where, for example, the slider widget that I had on the dashboard came in, because at first I was like, well, if people aren't going to interact with this on a touch screen, there's really no point in any swiping gestures on it. But since people still prefer to use the touch screen, I'm like, well, how can I consolidate important information without people clicking buttons here, buttons there, just to get where they need?
I may not be able to get an answer to this question before the buzzer goes, but the next question I had in my queue is, um, with things like reading messages and taking actions while a vehicle is in motion, there are laws around, like the National Transportation Safety Board, there are other rules about distraction. Have answers ready for what research you've done and how you know auto manufacturers want this type of thing and what the laws would be around it. And if you've done that, cool, right? But definitely have that content ready too.
I do want to mention, like, I was like looking into the laws a little bit, and there is no like specific guidelines when it comes to like actual like, I guess, touch screens and vehicles.
Hmm.
What I did discover was like there was mostly guidelines for like specific icons for like your hazards and like important vehicle system icons. So it was really interesting that I was actually like trying to look around guidelines and couldn't find too much about that. So
Some of it is ambiguous.
Companies develop their own guidelines. That's what I've learned so far at GM. Fascinating, right?
yeah.
And we've seen that often, but we've seen the recent lawsuit with Meta where they're like litigating against the product design. So I think it'll become a lot more important in the future that standards are set, and like some of those design decisions are made across the industry, not just by the specific platform. Great, thank you.
Right. And so while you're setting up, I think a couple other things, Justin. So it was really great that you were answering the questions directly, right? Like, especially like with Mary's question, super important. Um, some of the things that I was asking originally could have been part of that narrative, that lead in, that setup as well. So help make sure, like Mary had said about points in your resume, same thing here as I talked about with points in your portfolio. Think about, how do I ensure that the audience understands exactly what this thing is, how it's going to be used, where it's going to go. Other things that I observed as well would be the images, right? Like, I understand, like, sometimes you show a flow. Get past that fast. Don't talk while you've got that flow up. Get me to a picture. Get me to something engaging, something I can see, and make those pictures bigger. I don't need to read the slides, right? You're showing me your work, not just how you can annotate your work, unless that's part of what you're trying to show. But make them bigger and talk through it and take me through those things. So that would be super helpful.
Okay. Well, my name's Edward. I'm also a senior, going to graduate very soon. I'm very excited. And this is my thesis project. I'm very excited to share it with all of you. But yeah, I call it Clarity by Design, redesigning Yuka for the future. So what is Yuka? It's a mobile app that scans food and cosmetic products, barcodes to assess their health and environmental impact based on their ingredients, and then offers users a score and detailed information to aid in healthier shopping decisions. I really liked the app. I wanted to support it in any way that I could. And in a previous class, I had redone like a rebrand of it. So I thought redesigning the app, because I'm very interested in UX UI, would be a great decision. So the problem I find is the user experience and interface of the current Yuka app failed to align with the company's mission and values. Mostly with the mission deciphering food and cosmetic labels. It didn't necessarily teach you how to read nutrition labels. It just laid out the information as I think there was a separation between the product and the information you were receiving. And it wasn't teaching you how to, without the app, like be able to decipher if it's healthy or not. So here's another instance of why that current app doesn't work. So currently it takes 5 clicks to get into the deepest bit of information, as you see here, for an additive. If you want to see why it's not healthy for you, it takes 5 clicks to get to that. So that was UI I did not appreciate and wanted to solve for. So my problem statement is how can the Yuka app be improved to increase the clarity and transparency of the information and its validity? And then my research findings. So my research explored design from a more broad and a specialized UX UI perspectives, and then applying these design principles in new ways grounded my process, and established user experience practices. And then a survey that I conducted to understand user preferences found that most users wanted an all-in-one app versus multiple apps that each do just one thing. And then, yeah, I found effective ways to present app data transparently so that it was easily digestible, because I didn't feel it was in the prior or in the current app. And I just wanted to get users that information as efficiently and quickly as possible. My competitive analysis, I compared to 3 other similar apps. So compared to Yuka, Think Dirty is just cosmetic products, so not food. Trash Panda is just food and not cosmetics. And then same with the Food UK, it's just a food scanner, but it also has nutritional coaching. They all offer slightly different things, but I feel Yuka is the best, well-rounded app out of all of them. The audiences are all pretty similar. Yuka has the widest audience, and I really appreciate the cost of Yuka because it's has a very great free version with many of the features users need off the bat. But if they want to subscribe, is a donation-based subscription, and they can pay from $10 to $20. So it's up to them based on how much they want to support the company, essentially, versus being a limited free version for the rest of them with a super set yearly or monthly payment plan. So here's the current Yuka logo and then my rebrand of the logo. I wanted to do a shopping cart because users are mostly using this app when shopping. Hence also the tagline clarity in every cart, emphasizing that transparency and clarity from product to the effects of your health within the product. Typography, I chose NewsEnd. This was probably the first decision I made when looking through the project. This typeface just popped out to me and it felt nice and friendly, but also contemporary. So it didn't feel like it would be trendy and then fall off later on. And then I made a few icons for the app. So the scanning icon, because I needed a scan icon and I wanted to have a unique one for my app. The Yuka cart is used in a couple other spots. And then I wanted a personal persona and then one for the For You page to show the customized persona. So that you can see a little sneak peek of the redesign with some of my icons. The original app icon you see here. I made new app icons in both liquid glass and flat designs, kind of designing for iOS 26. And then just to show that they're customizable with all of the built-in customizations through the phone. So here's a layout of the original app. So it's not the worst app out there, but it could definitely benefit from a fresh coat of paint, especially like a design that's more unique and will stand out against its competitors. It's very basic. And then another issue I had was with the history page. And you'll see at the top, you see the favorites, the trash icon, and the info button. So I feel like the favorites button is very inconspicuous. It's a whole page of where your favorites are saved. It also only shows up on the history page. And the trash can icon is kind of like a select icon where you would click it and be able to delete anything you've scanned in your history. But something like a select button would allow you to select multiple things to delete or select multiple things to share to somebody just to make it more flexible. So I didn't feel that that was very fitting. And the info button, unless you click on it, doesn't really reveal what it is initially. But what it does is it pops up with a window that takes you to your account page and gets you help within the app. So my app design, here are the same 4 screens. I've given it a complete design overhaul, carefully crafting a unique look that Yuka can use across its branding. And then the project was also an opportunity for me to play with designing for iOS 26's liquid glass, as controversial as that may be. But I also felt it was a great visual representation of transparency or clarity, which is what I was going for in the design. Here's the history page side by side. So all the information in the products has been moved into their own individual cards rather than a list. And then the tab bar has been added to the top to quickly filter between the three main categories being food, beauty, and then additionally I added a pet category. The 3-dot menu is now where options like select and even more filtering will live. And then the button next to that being the count button, which you'll find on many main tabs to easily go to your account and make it more intuitive. And here's another page. So I've changed, as you see, recommendations to For You to kind of update the terminology, make it a little bit not more catchy, but I don't know, less official, maybe more in line with something you'd see like TikTok. You're used to a For You page. So making it consistent with what users may see on other apps. And then bringing that same card design from the history page to the For You for app consistency. Here is the original top products page, which I've renamed to top picks. This took a lot of inspiration from the Apple Music and Apple Podcast search, where there's large cards with images versus just a list of them. So design kind of went from lists to cards. So I wanted to keep that consistency. And you can now see the favorites tab has moved here. Because it's top picks, it's your top picks. I felt your favorites would fit right in with this page. And then your favorites originally was a pop-up window. It still is a pop-up window. But it gets a full screen UI unlike the windowed look. But I've brought the gradient from the bottom up to tell users that when you click it, it's coming down from the bottom. And then that color is now coming up to the top. I can show you that in the prototype though. So let's see. Okay, well, that's not popping up. Okay. So here is the history page as we saw. And the For You page. Oh. Top picks. And then this is what I was talking about. So when you click on your favorites, the gradient continues from the top now, coming from the bottom to show that this is a pop-up window. And then there's a button to close it. So spatially, it's in its own world, and it's not like I tried to make the logic of where each page of the app lives just as intuitive as possible. And then the account page can be accessed from any of these main tabs in a similar fashion. And then if I can scroll here, I can't scroll. Oh, there we go. Is it thinking? I have to click. There we go. We go here. This is the new product info page. So you'll see there at the top, if it's a product that is rated bad or red, there'll be a call out the brand right at the top where you can essentially email the brand to convince them to change their ingredients in their product. And then, yeah, that will automatically pop up on any product that is bad. And then this is partially the solution to fixing the multiple taps. So right now you've clicked into this, which is one tap. You click that arrow to open up the info about the additives. And then you'll click one more time to figure out why the additives are bad for you. So just to limit the clicks, there is more information on one screen, but it streamlines the process a little bit more than it was originally. Feedback. So I was just wanted to ask how the flow of the presentation felt. Are there any blaring or overlooked concerns in the redesign? And then what emotions, if any, does the new design evoke? And then any additional questions, of course.
I would say if you're doing a design review and you're asking people for this, tell them ahead of time so they can be seated and they can be thinking about it during it. But for this, we'll say this was a portfolio presentation. We'll ask questions and give feedback as such. Mary, do you have anything you ask? Do you want me to go?
Great, I've unmuted. So the presentation felt really good. I'll skip forward to the emotions that a new design evoked. I actually really loved the color, and I noticed there was just this vibrancy and this energy that wasn't necessarily on the original Yucca app
Mhm.
as you shared it. I was feeling it. I also felt particularly activated when there was that feature that you shared about giving feedback to a brand that was
Mhm.
on the naughty list,
Yeah.
to change your ingredients. I was like, yeah, I got some people to email, right?
You take
Just very
action.
activating, exactly, and very empowering. So I was unprepared for those emotions, but I wanted to share that they popped up for me.
Yeah. Thank you.
But for you, Ed?
I don't have emotions. Sorry. No, I'm kidding. But thanks for showing it. Like, and I love
Yeah.
that this was something you care a lot about, and you wanted to kind of bring that into your work and shows.
Mhm.
As you were making a lot of the decisions for the new layout,
Mhm.
I didn't really catch what research you had done or who you had validated with this with,
Mhm.
or how you validated some of your assumptions. Can you share that, please?
Yeah. So a lot of design decisions were made. I have a lot of like in my process book I'm making for this project. I'll have all the app iterations that I did prior, and then I just asked classmates and got user feedback on their preferences and the way it looked, what made sense, what did make sense. And then I also looked at existing apps for a lot of the inspiration to see what is working in existing apps and implemented in mine.
Mhm. Great. Um, I'll ask one more, and I'll dig into something very specific here.
Mhm.
In the layout, I think there were two things that I worried a little bit about.
Okay.
So the contrast and data size, text size, density, visibility of things, I worried a little bit about accessibility
Okay.
through that, and not even just someone with like visual impairment,
Yeah.
but somebody who's in their 70s who can't see that tall things up close anymore. And then also the I think if you've ever heard of the squint test, this is what I
Okay.
learned in design school. Squint at it, and then it helps you see the value changes and differences instead of just
Like
the color
shapes.
differences and the
Okay.
shapes. But how did you come to some of the conclusions of the final design, like the like in the for you blocks, the text for the item names and the subtext for the labels and things?
Oh, I went based off of general like UI type size, like minimums and maximums.
Mhm.
Um, and then like the rating used to be even smaller than it was now, and I got some user feedback that said that might be a little bit too small, so I made it a little bit larger. Um, but yeah, it was kind of those two things. So a little bit of
Okay.
user feedback, and then looking at like specific type sizes that worked on app design.
Sure.
Yeah.
And as someone measuring a portfolio review,
Yeah.
sometimes I totally understand that data loss through online presentations, through projectors,
Yeah.
sometimes that happens.
Yep.
But as we shared earlier as well, check for that type of stuff
Yeah.
and watch for it. And like from here across the room, it's a little smaller than my phone is when I hold it up. Like
Yeah.
I will have to walk closer to read those things
Yep.
from here. So I would want to ensure that as you're presenting, the environment is conducive to being able to see your work
Okay.
and it isn't being destroyed by something
Like-
like a poor projector or something.
Okay. Yeah. It's great feedback. Thank you.
I do have questions. If you had more time, what would you do next in this project?
Actually, I'm putting a little bit of that in my process book, of future steps. I can't think of, there was one thing I'm trying to remember, I can't think of right now, but I think adding like the pet feature, so adding features to the app to make it a more all-in-one app, as well as continuing to experiment with ways to get the information earlier without having to dig for it as much. I also forgot to mention those little rating cards. What I added was the rating and then next to it 2 criteria. So you can see, like, for instance, additives and if it's organic or not. So depending on the product, you can get a little bit of insight before clicking in. So I think finding more ways to implement things like that, where bringing the information,
I love it.
yeah, not as deep, not burying the information as much.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
If you're open to feedback and suggestions of other explorations, I
Yeah.
actually picked up an accessibility element similar to Ed. So just the fact that both of us had actually a similar takeaway.
Yeah.
So I understood from the competitive analysis that
Mhm.
the user base is primarily women.
Mhm.
Color plays a really important role in your app design, and it's often informing, like we have the red, yellow, green, et cetera, of like what's the naughty product versus the really good one,
Yeah.
the green one.
Yeah.
1 in 200 women are colorblind, but it's actually 1 in 20 men that are colorblind. And so I think maybe even some exploration around accessibility and having a really inclusive app could be an interesting next step.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that was with the design I envisioned with all the colors and everything. It made it very hard to like take it back. Now like reverse and make it like even more like it used to. Yeah. 'Cause
Yeah.
it was like I overcorrected in the new direction. Yeah.
I
I
hear
think
you.
yeah, finding a balance is important.
Totally.
Yeah.
I do have one piece of feedback. It's actually about the slide rather than the app design itself. And so I
Okay.
wanted to share it. So it was one of your introduction slides. It was really text heavy.
Okay.
The specific, so this is one of the strategies too. Yeah, beautiful.
Okay.
So some of the words that we choose, especially on our introduction slide as we're introducing the problem,
Yeah.
what's important is everybody's actively listening.
Yep.
It's the beginning of the presentation. So because they're actively listening, when we potentially crowd an introduction slide with heavy narrative and word choices that are multi-syllabic, like they have multiple words.
Yeah.
What I found myself doing is like really trying to concentrate on the slide. I'm like, no, concentrate on the word. Oh,
Yeah.
concentrating on the slide. So I'm trying to read.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something that I think might help you and anybody else in the room. There's something called Fleisch-Kincaid readability scores.
Okay.
So Fleisch, FLESH. Yeah, Fleisch.
Okay.
And there's a specific readability score that you can put text into and it'll spit out a readability score. And what they've found is that typically for slide decks and for presentations, sometimes you actually want to optimize for a score of 60 to 70, which is like an 8th grade reading level. It's really simple words.
Yeah.
It's less than 15 words per sentence, right? So it's like really short and fast.
Yes.
And so those things actually might just choosing brevity of language or really short, snappy words would actually help you so that the audience can focus on the narrative you're saying.
Okay.
Because we can more easily understand the slide.
Yeah. Okay. Very good feedback. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think that's also probably why you gravitated to the for you instead of recommendations.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. 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 And then of course it doesn't fit in the tab bar at the bottom. I think it just says Rex. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, fitting at the top and the bottom and making it just, yeah, simplified. Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Great question. So I'll repeat the question for anybody on the line. So it was a question around the nature of a portfolio website. If we as a recruiting group or hiring managers prefer something freeform and creative versus something, what were the attributes you use? Like more organized, structured, standard. Okay, I have my preferences and I really want to understand what you said. So I actually have data on this. When I do present really freeform creative content portfolio sites, 80% of my hiring managers say no. And that's kind of sad because that's also an opportunity to showcase your creativity. But by and large, with industry standard, it's almost a bit of a formula with the portfolio websites. It's just something that has adequate structure, that's really organized and clean layout. So that's what I personally prefer. And then I prefer to see the creativity when I click into maybe the tile image or whatever to read about the project and see how your creativity was showcased throughout your solution. What about you, Ed?
I think there needs to be a good balance between the two. As we shared earlier, the actual design of it, even if your speciality is not being a visual designer, it still needs to be really like pleasing. Like it needs to be aesthetically pleasing. You need to be following, solid graphic design principles in your layout and the organization of the content. As you get to other concepts such as motion or micro interactions that may be occurring as you hover and do things, right? Anybody looked at the new MacBook sites, right? Like as you're scrolling through and the way Apple makes everything come in and they want it to be a full experience as you're going through. annoying AF at times when I want to get to data. I want to see information. And often in your portfolio, if I'm coming in, I'm going to want to pick and choose a couple things. I want to get in there quickly. I want to see stuff. I want to be captivated. I want to see something that makes a lot of sense to me. So I want to see your conclusion. I want to see that hero thing that you're really proud of. I want that to kind of be shining. And then I'm going to want to like pick in and see very specific things as well. So if you're building out a full site and you're putting multiple things inside of it, and it's not just a site that's more like a presentation where I'm walking you through a few things, allow me to get to those items quickly. So that structure, that organization, that navigation, all of those are going to be really important, especially if you're coming in as a product designer. Holy cow. If I go to a product designer's website and I can't figure it out, I'm probably going to leave. I'm probably not going to keep going. Right? I don't want to have to figure out something. I want to be able to see, oh, great, here are your projects. Here are the things. Here's the organization of the content put together. I click in, I can see it. I see the value of your work. I see what, beautiful things you created. And then if you've got more, great, cool. I can scroll on through and see more. I can see maybe something about your research, something about the process, something about your iterations would be great. It doesn't need to be a complete case study of every single thing that happened for the 6 months, 3 months, year that you were on the project, all of that. Keep it focused. Tell me the story that I need to hear in order to be able to make a decision on whether or not I want to give you a call and have you come in and talk.
Ed and I have a mutual professional contact who was formerly an illustrator and then went back to school for user experience design. And so it's Audrey. She had a really creative portfolio where she did some stuff and I was like, whoa, that actually really worked. So, hear the guidance, but also you got to pick and choose what really resonates for you and for your background. And I like his concept of striking a balance. But the practicality of it is, not everybody that is seeing your portfolio will feel like, oh, that's great, right? So we just try to strike as much balance as you can.
I think we'll get to the next question. I just want to add one more point to that. If you have a completely white screen, black Helvetica text, and you take me to individual projects, and that's pretty much what it is, there are some companies that will say, nope, move on, right? I think some of the things that Mary's saying at General Motors, the hiring managers want to see large, engaging images, stuff that draws them in, and then they care about the why later. As a hiring manager myself, I care about the why first, right? Because that's where my brain goes. So there will be a difference. And so that balance is super important. So the question was, did the quiet guy get hired at Twitch? Twitch did not hire the guy, but I made sure that guy got hired at Amazon. So in my role at that point in time, I was the bar raiser, the hiring bar raiser on the role, impartial person. I didn't work at Twitch. I was just a person brought in to help measure the senior designer. And I knew this was a person that Amazon needed. Amazon's hiring philosophy is a little different than some other companies, where Amazon says, we've got a position, we understand what the hiring bar is. Is this person better than 50% of everybody else doing that role in the company now? If we interview somebody and they're better than the bar, they raise the bar, we're going to hire them. Maybe that role, maybe you come in and like they needed more visual skills and your visual skills weren't quite up to snuff, but you were an amazing person. You raised the bar overall for product design. We'll go find a place for you in the company. And so I found some place for that person to work.
The recruiters will also find you a spot in it. So it's also helpful. Questions?
Actually, recruiting's responsibility there, but I cared about this person and Twitch tweaked me. So I'm
going to take this one. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So the question was, in the context of a portfolio review for like a final round at a company, how many projects should you present? Many companies have their own preference, but the standard guidance is to first ask for how much time you have to present. When I first arrived at General Motors, they said 30 minutes and no more because they felt like they could make their decision in 5-10 minutes. I'm like, nope, time out. We're going to give much more time to the candidates. And that was actually the candidates' feedback. They didn't feel like they had enough time to present. So industry standard, truly 45 minutes to 1 hour is how much time they'll have. First couple of minutes going to get shaved off by introductions, round robin, any technical issues if you have them. And then you need to be building enough time between projects to answer questions, right? So let's say if your portfolio is 60 minutes, you have 45 minutes of content that you really should prepare. For portfolio reviews, 45 minutes, maybe prep 30 to 35 minutes. In that space, most of the time you have total and full ownership over how time is dedicated or delegated. So for example, what I see that's really common at GM in the 45 minutes that I've pushed them to do is 2 to 3 projects. For the 60 minutes, I think a lot of people could do 3. What I see is successful is a lot of the people that are interviewing for senior roles, they've presented a million times, and so they're really great at time management. For the earlier career talent, we're still getting, our feet under us for how to manage time. So 2 projects might actually be a little bit safer. So always ask the recruiter if they have a specific preference. They probably will say 2 to 3, but it doesn't have to be equal weight to each project. It actually could be 25 minutes on this one, 10 minutes on this one, and a really fast one at the end, for example. Not always. So back to the topic of always ask your recruiter these things. It's an excellent question. So they should be providing to you who you're going to be meeting with, and it's totally okay for you to ask. Wait, I forgot to repeat the question. Okay. The question is, how do you learn how many people are actually going to be present at the portfolio review and figure out kind of who they are? So I would say you can ask the recruiter if that information isn't provided to you. Many companies will not release the last names of people. And if they do, you don't have to be creepy and look them up on LinkedIn. But if you want to just understand like what it is, my recommendation is actually to ask for what roles the people do at the company. Bless you. So you're fundamentally, you want to present the right messaging to the right audiences. It could change your presentation quite a bit if you're presenting to 100% designers versus mix of design, product, engineering, and marketing person, right? You might structure it differently. So always ask for that information. It's really uncommon to have 10. I've heard the horror stories of it happening, and it's like party on a Shine Bridge, right? Like it's just absolute craziness. Usually it's about 4 to 5 people, so it's a somewhat reasonable experience. Here's another trend. A lot of times when candidates are presenting, the interviewers will turn off their video. You might not actually get the facial expression feedback, the body language feedback, if it's a virtual interview. That might be really helpful, right? For you to understand, is this going well? Do people have questions? So be prepared for that as well.
Yeah. I want to add something to that. Having been a part of a lot of candidate portfolio reviews, especially because they're now virtual, I take notes in a very particular way, and I will screenshot every page that you're showing and type in questions and notes. So as I ask you questions, I'm able to say, okay, like on this particular slide, these were the words that you said. Tell me about how you landed on that insight. So be prepared for people like me, but also be prepared for people who may have more reflective, overall project questions.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I think a lot of career center guidance, which is generally really good guidance, is guidance that could apply to a really large student body of all different majors, right? And all different industries. I would take, if you're on the user experience product design track, I would balance that. But for visual design, branding, etc., I would get really creative. Alternatively, a different way that you could approach it that would be able to balance both of those sets of guidance, and people, I will tell you in advance, people give you all different types of guidance about your job search and your resume. So what you really need to do is pick what resonates with you and drop the rest. But another thing that you could do is actually have 2 versions of your resume. So I myself have done that too, where I had the keyword optimize one, and I looked at it later, I'm like, oh, it's kind of ugly. I could have done better. And, redid my resume. And so during the recruiting call, I said, I have a nicer version of my resume. Would you like this in PDF form? And that's ultimately what they used to interview me. But I got my foot in the door with the ugly resume that was keyword optimized. So you could experiment with different versions. Don't Torture yourself, don't have more than 3 versions of your resume. Anything beyond that is just too much. Sure.
Maybe to expand a little bit, because they're totally right. Has anybody ever tried to copy information out of a PDF document? Sometimes you try to copy and the selection is actually coming up over here and it's in weird spots and you can't always grab the text the way it appears. It's that same thing, even if your resume is not in PDF, if you have a layout to your resume that has columns or things that are visually appealing and look nice, when that goes into an AI system that's scrubbing the text, it may straight up go left to right, top to bottom, and it's jumbling everything up. So that becomes a big challenge. And Mary talked about keywords, right? Another super important thing for those automated systems. Do the words that hiring manager, that job description have called out appear in your resume? Are you using the standard terms that they use at their company?
The industry is as
And
well.
that the industry is using, but even at those companies, right? Like a lot of places are now all moving to calling the role of user experience designer product designer. Those, in my mind, are actually kind of two different things, but they are the same thing in a lot of places as well. So if somebody is making a distinction between the two, which one's on your resume, which one do they use? If they are searching for product designers and UX designers don't show up, right? So those are challenges that are difficult to solve for, but that one standard format that you can copy and paste straight through, that automated system can read easily, is really good idea. But if you're a visual designer and your resume comes to me and it's all text, it looks like a copy out of LinkedIn, like I'm gonna think, couldn't you have done more?
Perfect example, actually, somewhat recently. It was about 3 weeks ago. It was, one of the VPs at General Motors that governs all of the typefaces that is used, and just like really incredible, brilliant designer. He was hiring for his team, and he said, "No, on this resume, look at the layout. That's my first preview of their aesthetic judgments, their ability to, right?" So that's some example where the work inside the portfolio is actually quite good, but because the resume wasn't his expectation and it was like text heavy, whatever, it was like an automatic no. It does happen. It depends what type of audience you're trying to cater to.
And regardless of your major, your focus, the things that you want in your career, you're in a program that is about how information is shared and how clean that information is and how well somebody who's looking at it is able to absorb it. So the presentation of the information you give in a document that represents your curriculum vitae, your work, your history, that needs to help me be able to consume it and understand what your capabilities are. So I can do that from a straight text dump, but if you're in a visual role, that also needs to have some appeal. And if that text is the visual appeal, then make it work, right? ASCII art in there that works in some way.
All right. Well, thank you. I know we're at time and I know some folks need to get going to other classes. So thank you so much for coming on today.
I'm available to stick around if anybody doesn't have other classes and you have questions.